Hi, I'm Steve Nathans Kelly, editor of Streaming Media Producer, and I'm here today with Jeff Leach from Legacy Church and Zach Holley from Apache Rental Group. Legacy Church is based in Downey, California, and like a lot of us, they've been moving things online, streaming their services and getting the message out that way, and trying to communicate and keep the community together in the crisis that we're going through now. Maybe Jeff, you could just start off just talking a little bit about Legacy Church and how you've gotten involved with this.
Okay. Legacy Church, we're in Downey. We have on Sundays regular attendance anywhere from 200 to 250 people in service. With the social distancing, quarantine, whatever it is being called, we decided to move our services online. We haven't historically published live streamed video of our services. And so this was a new challenge. So that came up out of nowhere. It was a Wednesday night. I was asked what we would need to do to be able to do that, and that was for the next Sunday. That evening, I reached out to Zach, knowing that he had been working with a kit to live stream, and asked about its availability for that Sunday service. And he had it ready for me to pick up on Friday, and we started installing the gear, and we had a successful Sunday live stream.
And so Zach, was this something that you had been? I guess you run an AV rental service, is that right?
Yes, I work for an AV rental service. I do live broadcast shows. We install. I not only work for the service, I actually install the gear on the shows, and that's how I know Jeff. So I had been working on this streaming kit. I'd started putting it on paper in December, gathering the pieces together in January. By the time I had all the parts pieces up and running, it had been early February. And I was, at that point, just mostly, it had been an R&D. It looked nice from the inside and outside. I can get it to work in my shop, but we were still working out the kinks and figuring out what worked for it and where it would fit and what the demand was for this. And as crazy as it was, is right along as it started to be dialed in and working, this COVID thing started happening. And I started losing all my work, and I've slowly watched everything turn to a streaming-based service.
Yeah, makes sense. So yeah, I mean, this is obviously, even as there's been more and more demand for streaming, obviously we're not having in-person events. We're not doing a lot of the stuff that's traditionally been the lifeblood of the streaming industry. So tell me a little bit about what's in the kit, and did you customize it for Legacy Church, or just what they're working with there?
So I based the kit around the A10 Mini. It was a new product from Blackmagic, so I decided let's try their new switcher out. It's a 4-source HDMI inputs. So my first thing coming around was not all the sources we're going to use in the field are going to be HDMI. So immediately, one of the first things I did in the chain outside of the switcher was I threw in the bidirectional converters by Blackmagic. I think they're great because they auto-select your source. If you're feeding it SDI in or HDMI in, it knows what it's taking, and it'll auto-spit it out on the output side, and it'll output it either or. So I basically made harnesses from the switcher to 4 individual bidirectional converters. And then from the bidirectional converters, I ran an HDMI to a patch panel for each one and an SDI for each one. So that gave me the ability to run 4 HDMIs or 4 SDIs or 2 and 2, whatever made sense at the time being. And then I kind of just went along with taking everything off the A10 Mini and putting it on the back of the patch panel, getting it away from the router and kind of just keeping it all nice and clean in the back. I threw on a Blackmagic Smart Duo dual screen monitor on the front of the panel so we could physically see what we're doing in real time, QC it, see things are working, talking. And then a couple little audio things we had to do to get the audio to be perfect where we wanted it to be. The network with it works great. The USB-C out to a computer works great. It always sees it as a webcam. I've never had an issue with any computer not seeing it as a webcam. And really, it's given me the ability to, for a simple solution, throw down kit. I mean, whether we're talking GoPros or we could do FS7 Sony cameras, anything with an HDSDI signal or an HDMI out, we can do a little live show.
Okay, and then Legacy Church, what are you using to shoot with?
So we started with some cameras that Zach provided to us. There were some Marshall, I'm trying to remember the model. They were Marshall CV502s, and they were great for getting it out there and starting just on what we needed off the bat. It is a wide angle lens, and so up close it would slightly distort and fisheye, but it gave great full sanctuary views of the church. With that, people didn't like to see a empty sanctuary with pews that were empty, and so that shot was cut out pretty quickly. We've now gone to some Canon DSLRs. A 5D Mark IV is what we're using now as our primary camera, and then there's a EOS R as a secondary if we're using a second source. At the beginning, we were using 3 cameras and a computer input, but it was requiring us to run a heavy production staff. We had 4 or 5 people to operate between the switcher, the lights, the slide. And so we've cut that down and gone to really a single camera pre-shooting. But yes, so the Canon products are what we're using now. They do better in the low light. Our sanctuary is dark, and they also allow for facial autofocus, so it will track whoever's speaking if they're moving in and out and adjust for depth of field and that. So.
Okay, and I watched some of the Easter service that you put together.
Okay.
I saw it on demand. I didn't see it live.
Mm-hmm.
So you had it seemed like you're kind of going back and forth between the pastor and the worship band, and so how, was all of that streamed, shot and streamed live, or were there some pre-recorded components, or how are you doing that?
Everything now is pre-recorded. When we were shooting live for the first 2 weeks, again, it took 4 to 7 people on site working in close proximity to make it happen. And with where we are now, there's a desire to not have that many people in a confined space. So we're doing pre-records. It's whoever is on stage, and then a technician running the switcher and the cameras. And so we'll pre-record, and then that is sent off to be cut up and put together for the service. And then we then upload it as a live feed off of that recording. My role is assisting in providing network infrastructure. So it's wireless infrastructure, hardline for Ethernet to streamers or workstations. And so that's on the network architecture side. It's not in the actual camera operation, switching or editing. This has been all new to me since mid-March.
So now, Zach, in terms of your role, I mean, were you involved at the outset in installing this, and were you hands-on with this when they were getting started?
I was actually walking off on another project up north for Apple. So I had built the whole kit, and I had it at my shop, and he had called me saying he needed it. I was up north doing a job, Cupertino. I had some people at my shop get it out to him, get him what he needed, get him all wires, cameras. I basically made him a full little flight pack with everything I thought he could use. And like he said, for the first 2 weeks, they had the basic Marshall cameras, their HDSDI out. It's a simple way to see a feed. But they upgraded to nicer cameras, and the quality on the Easter service looked great.
Yeah, and with the Atem Mini, I mean that thing. One of the things that strikes me about it, besides being $2.99, which is just almost anybody
Unbelievable.
with something like this, it's in there, and you've got the software control panel, which is the same as in the higher end units. I mean,
Absolutely.
did you find it pretty, Jeff? Did you find it pretty easy to get started with and doing this?
It was pretty intuitive. There was a learning curve to start with, but it went pretty quick. I am still learning. It is very feature rich, and so basic functionality was very simple. But as I'm learning what different terms and functionalities mean in the audio engineering side, and then on the video side, I'm digging in deeper. So, but on the top, anyone can plug and play, and it works out of the box pretty seamlessly. But once you want to get into the deeper functionalities, it does take a little time and research, but it's very, very easy.
Okay, now, and in terms of getting the streams out, so what platforms are you streaming to?
We're streaming to 2 Facebook pages and 1 YouTube page as well. The church changed the church name first of the year from First Baptist Downey to Legacy Church Downey. And so we still have an active First Baptist Facebook page. And so that is still receiving the live stream as well as the congregation moves from one platform or one page to the other. We're wanting to cover both sides at this point. So I'm doing that through a Webcaster X2. Is something that I had purchased and was playing with before the fly kit was delivered.
That's the Epiphan, right?
It is, yeah.
That's a nice unit.
And so that allows to push to Switchboard, which is a third-party cloud-based. It sends a single stream to Switchboard, and then you can pick your destinations, and it will push them live for you there. And that's been nice. If our network there at the church is not very resilient, and it's on the carrier side, and so if we tried to do 3 actual pushes or live streams at the same time, the bandwidth wouldn't support. So a third-party service is really necessary for that. So.
Yeah, it makes sense. So, yeah, I mean, I actually have a number of friends that are in the clergy that were asking me, what do we do, when all this social distancing started. And, it's interesting you say that you switched pretty quickly to pre-recording the video and then getting it online. Because I told one friend who wasn't confident in the bandwidth they had at the church. I said, there's nothing wrong with pre-recording it and just making sure the congregation gets it when church is supposed to start. How has the reception been with the congregation? You mentioned seeing the empty seats wasn't so great, but
yeah.
Other than that, have they been taking to it? Has it been easy for them to watch it? Has there been problems?
Most definitely, they've taken to it. First week we only streamed to YouTube, and we had about, I want to say, 350 views by the end of the week of that stream. For our Easter service this morning, we are 4 days later, just over 10,000 views across the 3 platforms. The live stream is seeing anywhere from 200 to 240 people actually watching the live stream, pretty sustained through from start to finish. And with that, in the comments section, there's a lot of welcomes, hellos, miss you. And so it is giving a way for people that wouldn't necessarily reach out to an individual that they would see on a Sunday. They are able to interact during the service with each other. And I think that's been a huge benefit for them.
And so do you get a sense that this has been challenging for the worship team? A couple of people I've talked to who are doing this say it's different preaching to a camera than preaching to a congregation.
Yes, it's most definitely different. They don't know where to look. You're looking into a room that seats upwards of 800 people, and there's me sitting there at a table, and so that's kind of awkward. I asked the Pastor Shane, because you asked the question what the adjustments are, and his response was there's been a high learning curve that's required a lot of agility from the leadership and transition from leading people physically to leading in physical separation. We've had to focus on learning from others who are more experienced, and this has helped us develop eye contact, creating energy and production skills that our church wasn't experienced in before this crisis. The shift online has required a forced mental, emotional, and purposeful response that has impacted every level of the church functioning. God has showed us how to use the crisis as an opportunity to reach thousands where we were unaware of our existence before the crisis. They most definitely, it's a conscious effort. We've joked about putting placards in the seats. It's difficult to get excited or to have some energy with an empty house.
Do you think anything will change about how the church does things, or do you think the church is able to do new things that will be part of this program going forward?
We'll most definitely continue to live stream as we continue on. There's no question about that. We're in the process of sourcing and building a long-term system for the church to be able to do that. With what's going on in the world, it's difficult to find equipment in this kind of niche, and so we're building that out. I have since returned the flight kit to Zach. I have purchased myself back middle of March a ATEM Mini. They were back ordered. I just got it this last Sunday. And so we're going to use that in the interim. And the idea would be to go to one of their larger boards that this is based off of, and then stay within the product line. It's very intuitive for a Sunday volunteer to come up and push buttons that are illuminated rather than having to try to learn an entire system that they touch very rarely. So that's kind of, we'll most definitely continue down this route, and it's been a good product for that.
Yeah, it seems like you're reaching 10,000 people. That's not, I mean, that seems to add a new dimension, to what the church is able to do.
Most definitely.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add before we sign off here about this experience, or see going forward?
I'm actually using my ATEM Mini now for this Zoom call, and in my living room. So this is not on. Let's see. This is the table that I'm at now, and these are the bidirectional converters that Zach used. This is the webcaster that we use at the church, and it makes it very easy to switch between sources. That's the second computer I have here at the table with me. It makes it very simple. I set this up in 25 minutes this morning in preparation for this. So I think that it's a good product for this functionality. Going real large, I don't think that is where it is, but in small settings, it's most definitely a easy to use, resilient product. The only thing that I do have different, audio was an issue. We were trying to get service out of our church sound system, and the ATEM Mini has two 3.5 millimeter jacks for audio up on top, and those were getting a ground loop or ground hum from the powered board. And so we've gone to a Zoom recorder. that gives our audio source. It's made for a webcam mic or podcast mic that is either USB powered or battery powered. We were not able to get it to work well with a powered external audio source that's AC powered. That was the one complaint that I did have. But the Zoom works. It has XLRs on the bottom, so we can hook up other audio equipment for that. So that has been nice.
And I agree with him. I think one of the main downsides is that 3.5 millimeter jack. Looking at the TV Studio HD compared to the A10 Mini, the software is identical. It's very easy to learn the A10 Mini if you've already learned TV Studio. If you use the software, it'd be even easier to learn the TV Studio if you began with the A10 Mini. A10 Mini feature-wise, I love the picture-in-picture. I think the picture-in-picture is a great feature Blackmagic introduced that wasn't in the other products. Going forward, I'd love to see a solution similar to what the A10 Mini provides in more of a TV Studio style frame that's rack mountable. I do like that it's a keyboard style, but I am more fan of rack mountable gear for traveling wise. So I just think it's easier to pack up if it's all set up. No one's touching wires and unplugging things for that reason. But I think, like Jeff was saying, the 3.5 millimeter, the ground on the board it's not isolated. So if you take an XLR input from a third-party console mixer, directly from a mic even, there's a little crack, a little hum. There's some forums I've found on Blackmagic stuff that I've addressed to Blackmagic, and it seems to be that Blackmagic's solution to me was that the audio has to be on the same ground as every HDMI input. So that say the mic console has to be, or a mixer console has to be on the same power source as every camera's HDMI's output, which isn't always, we can make that work in some situations, but it's not a common thing, and it's something you have, if you're not familiar with, you're going to be scratching your head, why isn't it working? And I think that's why that Zoom recorder that he uses works great. I think they take a third XLR out of the console, put it in the Zoom, and the Zoom outputs 3.5 millimeter directly to the A10, which is awesome.
Thanks so much for your time, Jeff and Zach. Appreciate this, and stay safe and healthy. Good luck going forward.
You too,
Thank you, Steve.
As well. Thank you for having me.